It was a bright and warm Saturday afternoon in a small town where the streets were slowly filling with people enjoying the day. Families walked together, children ran along the sidewalks laughing, and the local market had a steady stream of visitors. The air smelled faintly of fresh bread from the bakery on the corner and blooming flowers from the little park nearby. Among the people on the street that day was a young woman, visibly pregnant, walking carefully as she carried a few groceries in one hand. Her other hand rested gently on her belly, as if to protect the little life growing inside her. She had a calm smile on her face, unaware that the day was about to take a frightening turn. She had just finished picking up some fruits and vegetables from the market, and the woman had been looking forward to making a simple meal at home. She moved slowly, aware that her condition made walking a little more difficult, but her pace was steady. She greeted the shopkeepers with a small nod and a smile as she passed, and everything seemed normal. The town was usually peaceful and people felt safe here. Children ran around playing tag and dogs barked happily in yards. Birds chirped from the trees lining the streets, adding a natural melody to the atmosphere. Suddenly, the quiet hum of the day was shattered by the loud roar of motorcycles. The sound was startling, echoing through the streets and drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Heads turned and people stepped aside to make room as a group of bikers came into view. They were a rough-looking bunch wearing leather jackets, sunglasses, and helmets. Their motorcycles were large and loud, rumbling aggressively as they weaved between pedestrians, making some of the smaller children freeze and some adults step back in concern. The pregnant woman froze as the bikers passed. She could feel her heart racing, her hand tightening instinctively on her bag. There was one biker in particular who seemed to notice her. He slowed down slightly, looking at her with a smirk that sent a chill down her spine. She had never seen him before and didn't understand why he had singled her out. She tried to move faster, thinking maybe she could get past him, but he moved closer, cutting off her path. People around started murmuring, unsure what to do because the biker's presence was intimidating. He was tall, muscular, and seemed completely unconcerned with anyone else on the street. The woman's mind raced. She was pregnant, carrying groceries, and completely alone in this moment. Fear gripped her and she felt trapped. She didn't know whether to yell for help or try to run, but every step seemed uncertain. The biker started shouting, though his words were unclear from where the others stood. It was the tone that mattered, the aggressive, threatening tone that made her stomach twist in fear. Some pedestrians tried to step in but hesitated, sensing the biker's volatile nature. Nobody wanted to make the situation worse. As the tension rose, people's attention was drawn to a figure jogging toward the scene from the far end of the street. At first, it seemed like another pedestrian trying to avoid the commotion, but as he got closer, it became clear that he was someone who commanded attention, not through shouting or aggressive behavior, but through his calm, confident presence. It was Cena. People recognized him immediately, even off-duty, dressed in casual clothes and sneakers. He had an aura that made it clear he could handle difficult situations. Cena had been in the area earlier, working on a project nearby, and decided to take a short break with a walk to clear his mind. He had no idea he would stumble into a tense situation in the middle of the street. As he approached, he noticed the crowd gathering, and the pregnant woman frozen in fear. He could see the biker moving aggressively, getting closer to her, and he understood immediately that she needed help. Cena didn't hesitate. He increased his pace, jogging toward them with purpose, his eyes locked on the biker, ready to step in if needed. The woman's fear only grew as the biker shoved her slightly, trying to snatch her bag. She stumbled a little, gripping her belly protectively and holding the groceries tightly. Her heart raced and her breathing became shallow. People around gasped, unsure whether to step forward or wait. The moment was tense, frozen in time, as if the entire street had paused to watch. Nobody expected the situation to escalate so quickly. The biker's smirk had disappeared, replaced by a harsh expression of control, but that control was about to be challenged. Cena arrived just in time. Without a word, he placed himself between the biker and the woman, creating a barrier with his presence alone. The crowd around them watched in awe as the large, calm figure stood firmly, ready to defend someone in need. Cena's voice was calm yet firm as he spoke, telling the biker to step back. He didn't shout or threaten. His authority was clear in his tone and posture. The pregnant woman looked at him with wide eyes, a mix of relief and disbelief washing over her. She had never expected anyone to intervene so quickly, and certainly not someone like Cena. The biker paused for a moment, confused by the sudden confidence in Cena. He had expected to intimidate the woman easily, to provoke fear, and maybe even cause a scene. But Cena's calm presence changed everything. The crowd started to feel a sense of safety, realizing that someone capable and strong was handling the situation. Parents held their children closer, and some of the bystanders even began moving closer, curious to see what would happen next. The tension in the air was thick, but it was no longer one-sided. The woman's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the groceries in her arms. Her breathing was still uneven, but she felt a wave of relief knowing that Cena was there. She had been terrified moments ago, feeling helpless against the aggressive biker. But now, with someone protecting her, that fear began to ease slightly. The crowd noticed the shift too. The biker's aggressive demeanor wavered under Cena's calm authority. People whispered to each other, amazed at the sudden turn of events. Cena didn't rush or make any sudden movements. He stayed steady, watching the biker carefully, making sure the woman was safe. His eyes communicated that he was ready to act if needed, but his calm approach also gave the biker a chance to back down without further confrontation. It was a delicate balance, showing strength while avoiding unnecessary escalation. Every second felt long, but the pregnant woman could feel her pulse slowing slightly, encouraged by Cena's composed and protective stance. As the minutes passed, the situation reached a critical point. The biker, now aware that the crowd and Cena were paying full attention to him, seemed unsure of his next move. He looked around, realizing that his aggressive behavior was no longer impressive or intimidating. The street, once a scene of fear for the woman, had shifted in favor of calm and safety. The woman's grip on her groceries tightened a little less, and she allowed herself a small sigh of relief, hoping that the danger might soon pass. Cena, noticing the subtle hesitation in the biker, continued speaking in a calm, firm voice, making it clear that the woman would not be harmed and that it was time for him to step back. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten violence, but the authority in his tone was unmistakable. The pregnant woman watched silently, feeling a mix of awe and gratitude for this stranger who had stepped in without hesitation. She felt protected in a way she had never imagined possible, and her mind began to shift from fear to hope. The tension in the street was palpable as John Cena remained calmly between the pregnant woman and the biker. The woman's hands still trembled slightly, clutching her groceries and instinctively holding her belly, but she felt a little more secure knowing someone capable had stepped in. People in the crowd were watching closely, unsure of what would happen next. Some held their phones out, quietly filming, while others whispered to each other, their eyes fixed on the confrontation. Everyone sensed that this was a pivotal moment, a rare glimpse of courage meeting aggression, and they didn't want to look away. Cena's presence was both calming and commanding. He didn't yell. He didn't make threatening gestures, but the biker could sense that Cena was prepared for anything. He had the stance of someone who could act quickly, someone who had faced challenges before and would not allow harm to come to the vulnerable. Cena's eyes never left the biker, watching for any sudden moves while also keeping a careful eye on the pregnant woman, ensuring she stayed as safe as possible. She looked at him with gratitude, a small smile forming on her lips, though fear still lingered in her eyes. The biker shifted uncomfortably under Cena's steady gaze. His initial confidence seemed to falter slightly, but he was not ready to leave just yet. He revved his bike, hoping the noise and motion would intimidate Cena and the crowd. The roar echoed down the street, rattling windows and drawing even more attention. Pedestrians stepped further back, giving the biker space, but they also subtly moved closer to Cena, seeking reassurance. The atmosphere was tense, almost like a delicate balance that could tip in either direction at any moment. Cena spoke again, his voice calm but firm. He reminded the biker that no one would be harmed and that the woman had done nothing wrong. His words weren't loud or aggressive. They carried weight because of the quiet confidence behind them. The pregnant woman listened, her heart still racing, but she felt a small spark of hope. Hearing someone speak with authority, someone willing to protect her without provoking violence, gave her courage she hadn't realized she had. The biker tried to act tough, shifting his weight on the bike and smirking in an attempt to regain control of the situation. He moved closer to Cena, trying to test him, but Cena didn't flinch. Every step the biker took forward was met with a subtle but firm counterbalance from Cena, making it clear that the woman's safety was his priority. The crowd could feel the tension growing, their eyes darting between Cena and the biker. wondering what would happen if the situation escalated further. Meanwhile, the pregnant woman's thoughts were a whirlwind of fear and relief. She couldn't understand why someone would behave so aggressively toward her, a person who had done nothing wrong. She kept adjusting her grip on the groceries, holding them closer to her chest, and instinctively moved her body slightly behind Cena, trusting him to shield her. Her mind raced with questions about what might have happened if Cena hadn't been there. She realized just how vulnerable she had been, and the thought made her heart pound even faster. Cena, however, remained focused and composed. He spoke again, this time addressing the biker in a way that was firm but not confrontational. He reminded him of the consequences of causing harm, of putting someone's life at risk, especially a pregnant woman. Cena's words were simple, but they carried authority. The biker paused, the tension in his shoulders evident, as if he were realizing that this situation was no longer entirely under his control. Cena's calm strength was creating a sense of order in a moment that had threatened chaos. People in the crowd began to notice a subtle shift. The biker's aggression seemed to waver as he glanced around at the witnesses. Some began whispering to each other, pointing out how Cena had handled the situation without raising his voice or making threats. The pregnant woman felt a sense of relief starting to replace her fear, though she still clutched her groceries tightly. She realized that someone had chosen to stand up for her when she couldn't defend herself. And the thought was both humbling and reassuring. The biker, now visibly frustrated, tried once more to assert control. He revved his engine again, the loud noise echoing down the street. Cena didn't react with anger. Instead, he remained calm, his stance steady and unwavering. It was clear that he was not intimidated, and the biker could feel the shift in power. Every second the biker lingered, it became more obvious that Cena was ready to take decisive action if necessary. But he preferred to resolve the situation without escalating it further. The pregnant woman took a small, careful step backward, feeling the protection of Cena's presence. Her hands trembled slightly less, and she allowed herself a quiet sigh of relief. The crowd around them had begun to sense the change too. People whispered about how remarkable it was to see someone intervene so calmly in a tense situation. Children peeked from behind their parents, curious and wide-eyed, sensing the drama unfolding in front of them. Cena continued to speak to the biker, reminding him that violence and intimidation would not solve anything. His words were steady, and the pregnant woman could feel the sincerity and strength behind them. She realized that Cena was not just a famous figure. He was someone who cared about people and would step in when needed. The thought gave her courage, and she began to relax slightly, though she stayed close behind him. The biker's smirk faltered further as he realized that the crowd and Cena were fully focused on him. He looked around, noting that people were watching closely, that they were no longer passive bystanders. Their presence, combined with Cena's calm authority, made the biker pause. He muttered something under his breath, though the words were lost to the noise of the street. It was clear, however, that he was starting to lose his confidence. Cena didn't rush the situation. He allowed the biker the opportunity to step back, speaking slowly and clearly. He emphasized that it was time to leave and that no one would pursue him if he walked away calmly. His approach was strategic, combining authority with patience, and it was having an effect. The pregnant woman felt her heart rate slowing slightly, her body relaxing just a little as she realized the situation might soon resolve without harm. The biker hesitated, his posture tense, unsure of how to respond. The crowd watched silently, sensing that the next moments were crucial. Cena maintained his position, carefully observing the biker's movements while keeping the pregnant woman shielded. The balance of power had shifted completely, and the tension in the street was thick but no longer one-sided. The woman could feel the safety emanating from Cena, a stark contrast to the fear that had gripped her moments before. As the biker finally started to back away, Cena remained vigilant, ensuring that he didn't try any sudden moves. The pregnant woman allowed herself a quiet exhale, her hands relaxing slightly on her groceries. She looked up at Cena, silently expressing gratitude and relief. She realized that the street was still alive with a mix of curiosity and relief after the biker had initially backed down. But the tension wasn't completely gone. People were cautiously optimistic, yet everyone knew that in moments like this anything could still happen. The pregnant woman stayed close to John Cena, feeling the comfort of his protective presence. She clutched her groceries lightly, her hands trembling just enough to remind her that the fear had not fully left her. Her heart was still racing, but each step she took beside Cena gave her a little more courage. Cena's attention, however, remained fixed on the biker. Even though he had backed off slightly, Cena knew that someone like him might return or act unpredictably. The crowd had learned something in the past few minutes. They realized that Cena's calm and steady approach was not about showing off strength. It was about protecting the vulnerable and de-escalating a dangerous situation. His eyes never left the biker, scanning for any hint that the situation might flare up again. The biker shifted nervously on his bike. His initial display of aggression had not worked, and now he seemed frustrated. He glanced around at the crowd and muttered something under his breath, his expression a mix of confusion and anger. It was clear that he had not expected anyone to intervene, and certainly not someone with the presence of Cena. The pregnant woman, sensing the biker's uncertainty, tried to keep her breathing steady. She realized that she had been lucky, luckier than she could have imagined. As Cena stood in place, he began speaking again, his voice calm but firm, carrying across the street. He told the biker that it was time to leave, that he had no reason to cause trouble, and that anyone trying to harm the woman would face serious consequences. There was no threat of physical force in his words. The authority came from his unwavering confidence in the natural power of someone who refuses to let harm happen. The biker looked at him, clearly irritated but also hesitant. He didn't know how to respond to someone so composed in the face of his aggression. The pregnant woman felt a strange mixture of emotions: fear, relief, and awe. She had been terrified moments ago, unsure if she could escape harm, and now she was beginning to feel hope. She realized that sometimes the world can surprise you with moments of courage when you least expect it. She allowed herself to take a small step forward, testing the space around her, but kept Cena between herself and the biker. Every movement she made was careful and deliberate, showing both caution and trust. The crowd began to sense the change as well. Murmurs spread quietly among them as people realized that the biker was losing control of the situation. Children peeked from behind their parents' legs, watching in awe. The pregnant woman noticed some of them and gave a small, reassuring smile. Even in such a tense moment, there was a sense of shared humanity among the witnesses. They had all seen someone stand up for another person, and it was a moment that felt bigger than themselves. Cena, noticing the subtle hesitation in the biker, took a slow, deliberate step forward. He wasn't aggressive, but his movement was purposeful, making it clear that he was ready to act if necessary. The pregnant woman felt her pulse quicken again, but this time it was a mix of anticipation and hope rather than fear. She watched Cena closely, sensing that he was calculating every move to protect her and resolve the situation without violence. The biker, frustrated by the calm authority of Cena, tried one last attempt to regain control. He revved his bike louder than before, hoping the noise would intimidate Cena and scatter the crowd. The roar of the engine echoed through the street, startling some pedestrians, but Cena remained steady. He didn't flinch or step back. Instead, he took another slow step forward, his eyes locked on the biker, his voice calm as he repeated that it was time to leave. The combination of calm authority and readiness to act created a pressure the biker could not ignore. The pregnant woman felt her hands relax slightly as the biker paused. She could see the frustration in his posture, the way his hands tightened on the handlebars, the way his body leaned slightly forward as if he wanted to charge but couldn't. The realization that he was losing control seemed to dawn on him. He was no longer in a position to intimidate anyone, and the crowd's presence made it clear that his aggressive behavior would be noticed and remembered. Cena continued speaking in a calm, deliberate tone, reminding the biker that hurting someone, especially a pregnant woman, was unacceptable. His words weren't angry. They weren't a threat. They were a simple statement of truth delivered with confidence and clarity. The pregnant woman could feel the tension in her body slowly melting. She had been tense and fearful, but Cena's presence gave her a sense of safety she had never felt in a moment like this. The biker, now visibly agitated and unsure, looked around at the crowd. He could feel the eyes of dozens of witnesses on him, sensing their judgment and the resolve in Cena's stance. His aggression had failed, and he was faced with a choice: continue to escalate a situation that had turned against him or step back and leave. For the first time, it seemed clear that he had underestimated both the power of calm intervention and the courage of someone willing to protect another human being. The pregnant woman took a small, careful step closer to Cena, feeling a mix of relief and awe. She realized how close she had come to danger, and how fortunate she was that someone had intervened. Cena's steady presence allowed her to feel that she wasn't alone, that someone had taken responsibility for her safety, and that the situation could end without harm. The woman's gratitude grew, not just for the immediate protection, but for the sense of hope and humanity that Cena represented. As the biker shifted uneasily on his bike, Cena maintained his position. He allowed the man to see clearly that he was not intimidated, that he would not allow harm to come to the pregnant woman, and that the street was no longer a space for reckless aggression. The crowd, sensing the shift, began to relax slightly. Parents pulled their children closer, yet their eyes remained fixed on the scene, witnessing the quiet strength of a man standing up for another. The woman noticed small details around her as she tried to calm herself. The sounds of the street, the faint chatter of pedestrians, the distant barking of a dog, the rustle of leaves in the trees, reminded her of the ordinary world that had nearly been disrupted by one person's aggression. And yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, there was a profound sense of courage and humanity that Cena embodied. It was a reminder that people could act with strength and compassion, even in moments of fear. The biker's frustration grew, evident in the way he shifted his weight and revved the engine again. But Cena remained calm, continuing to speak clearly and steadily, emphasizing that there was no need for violence and that the woman would be protected. The pregnant woman felt the tension in her body begin to ease further. Each word from Cena, each deliberate movement reassured her that she would be okay. The moment was extraordinary, a blend of fear, relief, and admiration all at once. The crowd started to respond subtly, their collective energy shifting. Whispers of encouragement and relief spread quietly. People realized that Cena was not just defending the woman physically. He was also creating a sense of community, showing that standing up for one another was possible. Children peeked over the shoulders of adults, sensing the drama, but also feeling a quiet reassurance that someone strong and caring. The street had finally begun to feel safer, but the tension lingered just beneath the surface. Even though the biker had moved back slightly, everyone watching knew that it wasn't over until he was completely gone. The pregnant woman stayed close to John Cena, who maintained a protective stance, his eyes scanning the street to ensure no sudden danger could approach. Her grip on her groceries was lighter now, but her body still carried the memory of fear. She knew that in moments like this, the smallest action could make a difference, and she trusted Cena to guide her safely through it. Cena had a way of calming the crowd without saying much. People sensed his confidence and steady demeanor, and it created a quiet energy that spread through the street. Witnesses could see that he wasn't just relying on physical strength. He was using awareness, presence, and quiet authority to manage the situation. It was a skill that only someone who truly understood danger and protection could display. The pregnant woman felt reassured in ways words couldn't describe. She knew she wasn't alone anymore, and that knowledge alone was powerful. The biker, still frustrated, revved his engine again, but this time there was hesitation in his movements. He looked around at the growing crowd, realizing that the spectators were not intimidated. Their eyes followed every shift of his body, and it was clear that the street had turned against him. Cena's calm authority had shifted the power completely. He didn't make any sudden gestures. He simply stood firmly, observing, ready to act if needed. The pregnant woman felt her chest rise and fall more steadily as she realized that she was protected. Suddenly, the biker leaned slightly closer toward the woman, his intentions unclear. The woman froze, her hands gripping her groceries tightly, her mind racing with fear. But Cena reacted instantly, placing himself even more clearly between her and the biker. He didn't shout or act aggressively. He simply positioned himself as a shield, a steady presence that could not be moved. The pregnant woman felt a wave of relief wash over her. She realized that sometimes, safety comes not from confrontation but from calm confidence and clear boundaries. The crowd watched silently, holding their breath. Some whispered among themselves, amazed at Cena's ability to control the situation without raising his voice or threatening violence. Children peeked over the shoulders of adults, sensing the drama and tension, yet also feeling the reassurance that someone strong and caring was handling things. The pregnant woman glanced at them, realizing that bravery and protection weren't just about physical strength. They were about standing up for the vulnerable and creating space for safety. Cena spoke again. his voice calm but firm, addressing the biker directly. He reminded him that the woman had done nothing to provoke him, that aggression and intimidation would not be tolerated, and that leaving peacefully was the only acceptable option. The biker's smirk faltered. He was beginning to understand that this was no ordinary confrontation, that the calm authority of Cena could not be shaken by noise or posturing. Every word Cena spoke carried weight, and it resonated not just with the biker but with everyone watching. The pregnant woman could feel the tension in her body slowly beginning to melt. Her breathing, though still uneven, was more controlled. She realized that she had been fortunate to have someone intervene on her behalf. Cena's presence gave her not just protection, but also courage, and she began to feel a sense of empowerment even in the midst of fear. The small steps she had taken behind him were symbolic of the trust she placed in his judgment and presence. The biker, now visibly uncertain, revved his engine one last time, but it lacked the aggression of his earlier actions. It was almost as if he were testing the limits, seeing if he could still control the situation. Cena, however, remained unshaken. He didn't need to act physically. His steady posture and calm voice communicated clearly that the woman would not be harmed. The pregnant woman felt a deep sense of gratitude and relief. She realized that sometimes the presence of one person could completely shift the balance in a dangerous moment. People in the crowd began to breathe more easily as they sensed the resolution approaching. Parents pulled their children closer, yet there was a quiet admiration in their eyes. Some whispered to each other about how remarkable it was to see someone intervene with such calm and authority. The pregnant woman felt a connection to the crowd, a sense of shared humanity that was rare in moments of fear. She realized that courage and compassion often inspire others, and that witnessing an act of protection could change the way people viewed the world around them. Cena continued to speak to the biker, his words calm but deliberate. He emphasized that leaving was the only wise choice, that no one wanted trouble, and that any further aggression would be met with consequences. The pregnant woman could see the biker's frustration growing, but also his realization that he could not intimidate anyone here. His posture became more rigid and he shifted uneasily, the power dynamic having shifted completely in favor of safety and protection. The woman allowed herself a small exhale, her hands loosening slightly on the groceries. She felt reassured that Cena was there and that the biker could not harm her. She glanced at the crowd, noticing the subtle changes in their body language. People were more relaxed, their tension easing as they witnessed a dangerous moment being handled with care and authority. The pregnant woman realized that safety didn't always come from fear or confrontation. It could come from calmness, presence, and the courage to act when someone else was in danger. The biker, now clearly losing confidence, muttered under his breath and looked around at the people gathered. He could feel their eyes on him, and it was clear that he was beginning to understand the consequences of his actions. Cena remained calm, giving him space to retreat but making it unmistakably clear that any further aggression would not be tolerated. The pregnant woman felt her heart rate slow further. She realized that she could begin to trust that the immediate danger was passing. As the biker began to rev his engine more slowly, he finally made a decision. He shifted on his bike, muttered something indistinct, and began to move away. The pregnant woman felt a wave of relief wash over her. She adjusted her groceries, her hands still trembling slightly. But the fear that had gripped her earlier was fading. Cena stayed close, ensuring that the biker truly left the area before relaxing his stance. The crowd around them began to whisper quietly, expressing relief and admiration for what had just occurred. The pregnant woman looked at Cena, her eyes wide with gratitude. She felt a profound sense of thankfulness not just for the protection he had provided, but also for the calmness and care he had shown throughout the ordeal. She realized that in moments of fear, the presence of someone strong, capable, and compassionate could make all the difference. Cena's actions had not only prevented harm, but had also reminded her and everyone watching that courage and humanity exist in everyday life. The street began to return to a sense of normalcy, though the memory of the tension lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it. Parents gathered their children, whispering reassurances, and people resumed their walks, though with a heightened awareness of how quickly situations could change. The pregnant woman felt a mix of relief and empowerment. She had been vulnerable, but she had also witnessed an extraordinary act of courage. The memory of Cena standing firmly in her defense would stay with her long after the day ended. Cena walked with the woman slowly, making sure she was completely safe and guiding her to a quieter part of the street. She allowed herself to relax, feeling the protective presence beside her. Her body, still slightly tense, began to release the tightness that fear had caused. She adjusted her groceries, now feeling lighter, not because the weight had changed, but because the sense of danger had passed. The crowd had begun to disperse, leaving her with a quiet appreciation for the act of bravery she had just witnessed. The pregnant woman realized that she would remember this day for the rest of her life, not for the fear she had felt, but for the courage and humanity she had experienced. Cena's calm and deliberate actions had turned what could have been a dangerous encounter into a story of protection and compassion. She thought about how easily moments of fear could escalate, and how rare it was to encounter someone willing to step in without hesitation. This realization deepened her sense of gratitude and awe. As Cena and the woman walked further down the street, the energy of the scene slowly faded, replaced by a sense of normalcy and quiet relief. The pregnant woman's breathing had evened out, and she allowed herself to smile faintly, though the memory of fear remained in the back of her mind. She looked at Cena and nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement of everything he had done for her. The lesson was clear. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it stands quietly, protects and allows others to find safety and hope in moments of danger. Was in control. The pregnant woman, still close to Cena, realized how much courage it took to face such a situation without anger or aggression. She felt grateful not only for the immediate protection, but also for the example of calm strength she was witnessing. It gave her a sense of hope that extended beyond the moment, a reminder that even in frightening circumstances, people could act with integrity and care. The biker's indecision became more apparent. He revved the engine again, but his movements lacked the confidence he had shown before. It was clear that he was no longer in control, that the quiet authority and composure of Cena had shifted the balance. The pregnant woman felt her pulse begin to slow. She could breathe a little more easily, knowing that Cena's presence was keeping her safe and that the biker was unlikely to escalate further. Cena, sensing the man's hesitation, maintained his calm stance. He did not press the biker aggressively, but he communicated clearly that any further action would not succeed. The pregnant woman felt a deep sense of relief. She realized that bravery sometimes comes quietly, without shouting or force, and that true courage can appear in the form of calm, deliberate action. The biker finally looked around, seeing the crowd and realizing that the moment had passed. Slowly, almost reluctantly, the biker began to move away. The pregnant woman allowed herself to exhale fully for the first time in what felt like hours. Her hand still held the groceries tightly, but the tension that had gripped her body began to lift. She looked at Cena, eyes wide with gratitude and awe, realizing that his calm intervention had prevented harm and created a space of safety in the middle of the street. The crowd, sensing the resolution, began to relax as well. Parents hugged their children, people whispered in relief, and the pregnant woman felt the warmth of human kindness and bravery that had surrounded her in the most unexpected way. Cena continued to stand near her, ensuring she remained safe and that the biker truly left the area. The moment, which had started in fear, was slowly transforming into a story of courage, protection, and humanity. His presence had prevented what could have been a dangerous situation. The sense of security he provided was palpable, and she felt a wave of relief wash over her. People in the crowd began to murmur quietly, impressed by the way Cena handled the situation. Some whispered about how rare it was to see someone intervene calmly and effectively, protecting someone in need without escalating conflict. The pregnant woman felt a mixture of awe and gratitude, understanding that not everyone would have the courage or the ability to step in as he had. The moment was humbling, a reminder of the kindness and bravery that can exist even in ordinary life. The biker, now frustrated and clearly defeated, muttered under his breath before revving his bike one last time. He sped away slowly, leaving the pregnant woman and the crowd behind. The sound of the engine faded, replaced by the soft hum of the street returning to normal. The pregnant woman allowed herself to breathe fully for the first time in what felt like hours. She adjusted her groceries, her hands still slightly shaky, but she felt safe now. Cena stood beside her, calm and vigilant, ensuring she was unharmed. The woman realized that what had just happened could have ended very differently. Without Cena's intervention, the outcome might have been frightening or even dangerous. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for this unexpected protector, someone who had stepped in without hesitation. The crowd began to disperse slowly, talking quietly among themselves about the event they had witnessed. People would remember this day for a long time, not for the fear, but for the courage and calm that had turned a tense situation into a moment of safety. Cena walked with the woman slowly, ensuring she made it safely to a less crowded part of the street. His calm presence continued to reassure her, and she felt a sense of relief that was almost overwhelming. She had been vulnerable, alone, and frightened, but now she was safe. The street, which had moments ago been filled with tension, now felt almost peaceful. The small town had witnessed a moment of bravery and protection that would be remembered for years to come. By the time the biker realized that he was outmatched, Cena had positioned himself perfectly between him and the woman, a human shield of strength and calm. The crowd, once tense and unsure, began to breathe a little easier. Children who had frozen in fear now whispered to their parents, noticing the unusual turn of events. The small-town street, which moments ago had been filled with tension, now held a sense of anticipation. Everyone knew something remarkable was happening. Someone ordinary had become a hero in an ordinary moment. The pregnant woman's hands shook slightly as she glanced at Cena. Her eyes met his for a brief moment, and she mouthed a silent thank you, unable to speak. She felt reassured knowing that she was no longer alone. The biker, on the other hand, seemed increasingly frustrated and unsure. The power he had hoped to project over the woman was now gone, replaced by Cena's steady and protective presence. The dynamic of the encounter had completely shifted, and the woman felt a sense of safety she hadn't imagined moments before. The street around them remained tense, but the energy had changed. People were now quietly observing, sensing that the situation was under control. Cena didn't need to act aggressively to make a point. His calm confidence was enough. The pregnant woman adjusted her grip on the groceries again, feeling the weight a little less burdensome now that she wasn't alone. Her breathing slowed further as she realized that help had arrived in the most unexpected and reassuring way. This moment, which could have turned into a frightening experience, was slowly becoming a story of courage and protection. The pregnant woman, once frozen in fear, was beginning to regain her composure. Cena's presence alone had shifted the scene entirely, showing that sometimes calm authority and confidence could stop danger before it escalates. The street remained quiet, save for the faint hum of the motorcycles now slowing down slightly. The woman took a careful step forward, trusting Cena to guide her through the tense moment. The crowd continued to watch silently, knowing that they were witnessing something rare, a simple act of courage making a real difference. People whispered to one another, amazed that a situation that began with fear could now feel controlled and almost peaceful, all because someone chose to step in and protect someone in need. As the minutes ticked by, the pregnant woman realized that she would remember this day for the rest of her life. Not for the fear she felt, but for the courage and protection she experienced. Cena, standing firmly and calmly in front of the biker, became a symbol of hope and strength. For the woman, it was a reminder that even in ordinary towns, on ordinary days, heroes can appear when you least expect them. The fear she felt began to fade, replaced by gratitude and a sense of relief that someone cared enough to step in at the right moment.